There's a piece of supermarket chicken sitting in your refrigerator right now. Or maybe it's already in your cart, wrapped in plastic, stamped with a government seal. And the label tells you it's safe. The USDA says it's safe. The FDA says it's safe. The CDC tracks over 1.35 million salmonella cases annually, but they say it's safe too. The supermarket says it's safe. But the European Union, the United Kingdom, Japan, Australia, they won't touch it. And once you understand why, you'll never look at your supermarket's chicken aisle the same way again. This isn't a video about being a picky eater. It's not about organic versus conventional. It's about a regulatory system that, by its own admission, cannot stop contaminated chicken from reaching your plate. And about the 9 supermarkets where the gap between what you're being told and what you're actually getting is the widest. Let's start at the beginning. In 1997, the European Union made a decision that would define its food system for the next 3 decades. They banned American chicken, not because of trade wars, not because of politics, at least not primarily. They banned it because of how it's made. In the United States, the dominant model of chicken processing works like this. Birds move through a high-speed industrial facility at rates of 140 to 175 birds per minute. They're slaughtered, defeathered, eviscerated. And then, at the end of that process, they're dunked or sprayed with an antimicrobial wash, often chlorine. The logic is straightforward. Kill the bacteria before the product ships. Problem solved. European regulators looked at this system and asked a different question. If you need a chemical bath at the end of the line to make the chicken safe, what exactly is happening on the line itself? The European Food Safety Authority studied it and came to a conclusion that one U.S. food safety advocate later described plainly. Chlorine washing was being used as a band-aid to cover up what was really a lack of adequate hygiene. The EU's position, which it has maintained ever since, is that you don't fix contamination at the exit. You prevent it at every step, from the farm, through transport, through slaughter, through processing. They call it the farm-to-fork philosophy. The US calls its approach science-based multi-step intervention. Both sides have data. Both sides have credentialed scientists. But only one side requires disclosure. The United States does not require processors to tell you whether your chicken has been chemically washed. There's no label, no asterisk, no notification of any kind. And just weeks ago in April 2025, when trade negotiations between the US and UK were heating up, the UK's business secretary went on television and said flat out that Britain would never change its food standards. Not for any trade deal. Not even when chlorinated chicken was put directly on the negotiating table. That's how confident Europe is that their system is better. They'd rather lose a trade deal than let your supermarket chicken through their ports. So the first thing to understand is this. The gap between American and European chicken isn't a rumor. It isn't fear-mongering. It is official, documented, government-level policy. And it has been for nearly 30 years. Now here's something that will change how you read food safety labels for the rest of your life. The USDA has a testing program for salmonella in poultry processing plants. Specifically, the Food Safety and Inspection Service, FSIS, goes in regularly. They test, they categorize plants. Category 1 means you're well within the acceptable threshold. Category 2 means you're borderline. Category 3, the worst rating, means your plant consistently exceeds the maximum allowable level of salmonella contamination. Salmonella isn't even the only pathogen. Campylobacter infections from poultry cause an estimated 1.5 million illnesses annually, making it another major threat in contaminated chicken. Here's the part that matters. When a plant earns a Category 3 rating, the worst possible designation, the USDA cannot pull the chicken off shelves. It cannot issue a mandatory recall. It cannot stop the plant from processing. Its inspectors can note the violation. That's it. The contaminated product still ships. It still reaches your supermarket. It still ends up in your cart. In March 2025, Consumer Reports published a detailed analysis of USDA data. They identified 56 poultry plants across 22 states that had been sitting in Category 3 for at least 6 months. Not one incident. Persistent, documented, ongoing failure to meet safety standards. Over 50 plants. And those plants don't supply obscure regional brands. They supply the names you see every single week in your local store. Tyson Foods, a facility in Springdale, Arkansas, processing young chicken carcasses under the Tyson brand, held a Category 3 rating in that Consumer Reports analysis. Purdue Foods. 4 separate Purdue plants earned Category 3 in just the first 6 months of 2025 alone. And a ProPublica investigation found that during a multi-state salmonella outbreak, victims reported eating Perdue chicken more than any other brand. Public health officials found the outbreak strain in packages of Perdue wings, thighs, and drumsticks at 3 different supermarkets. Butterball. The Butterball facility in Mount Olive, North Carolina, which produces ground turkey, appeared on the worst offenders list. Costco's supplier, Lincoln Premium Poultry, has received the USDA's worst Category 3 rating for excessive salmonella contamination. Cargill, Foster Farms, Koch Foods, Mary's Chicken, operated by Pittman Farms, all of them cited for persistent multi-year violations that the USDA cataloged and then did nothing to stop from reaching store shelves. The USDA itself, over the past 5 years, has issued 0 criminal penalties, 0 civil penalties, 0 administrative penalties, 0 product withholdings because of excessive salmonella levels, despite its own testing data showing chronic failure at dozens of facilities. Think about that. Their own tests, their own data, their own Category 3 designations, and nothing. The reason comes down to how salmonella is legally classified. Unlike E. coli O157:H7, which the USDA has classified as an adulterant, meaning it legally cannot be present in meat at any level, salmonella is not classified as an adulterant in poultry. That means the USDA sets maximum allowable percentages. Companies that exceed those percentages are violating a standard, but not a law, and without a legal violation, there's no recall authority. To understand how absurd this is, consider the actual threshold numbers. The USDA standard allows up to 25% of ground chicken to test positive for salmonella before a plant even fails its benchmark. Over 15% of chicken parts, breasts, thighs, drumsticks, wings can test positive, and a plant is still technically within range. In Europe, any detection of certain salmonella strains, specifically Salmonella enteritidis and Salmonella typhimurium, the 2 most dangerous to humans, triggers mandatory action, not a rating, action. Salmonella causes over 1 million illnesses in the United States every year. The USDA knows exactly which plants are producing the most contaminated product. It publishes the data, and then it watches the chicken ship anyway. Now let's talk about a word that has become almost meaningless on American chicken packaging. That word is antibiotic-free. It sounds definitive, it sounds safe. It's on so many packages now that shoppers have started to assume it means something regulated and verified. At Walmart, at Kroger, at Albertsons, the antibiotic-free labels are everywhere. Here's what those labels actually mean. Very little, depending on which ones you're looking at. A 2024 USDA investigation tested 196 cattle at 84 slaughter establishments across 34 states. Animals that were labeled raised without antibiotics. 1 in 5 samples contained antibiotics. Drugs critical to human medicine, including tetracyclines and penicillin. The advocacy group Farm Forward had to obtain the company names through a Freedom of Information Act request. The agency itself has not released what action it plans to take, if any. Tyson Foods, one of the biggest names in American chicken, had to quietly pull its raised without antibiotics labels from some of its chicken products after USDA scrutiny began in 2024. The company said it continues to offer antibiotic-free beef based on market demand, but it did not specify which brands or private labels would maintain that standard going forward. Meanwhile, the labels themselves are a maze. No antibiotics ever is different from no antibiotics important to human medicine, which is different from no growth-promoting antibiotics. Shoppers see the word antibiotic and assume it covers everything. Often it covers almost nothing. A Consumer Reports survey found that 53% of Americans believe no antibiotics on a label means no antibiotics of any kind were used. That belief is frequently wrong. The stakes of this aren't just personal. The routine use of antibiotics in industrial chicken farming is one of the primary drivers of antibiotic resistance globally. The development of what scientists call superbugs, bacteria that are no longer controllable by the drugs that have saved millions of lives. Nearly 23,000 Americans die each year from antibiotic-resistant infections. Europe banned the use of antibiotics as growth promoters in livestock in 2006. Across the EU, antibiotics in farming are restricted to therapeutic use only, meaning a sick animal may be treated, but healthy animals cannot be given antibiotics preventively to accelerate growth or to compensate for overcrowded conditions. In the United States, the FDA issued voluntary guidance in 2013 asking the industry to phase out the use of antibiotics for growth promotion. Voluntary, Guidance, not a mandate, not a law, a request. A Reuters investigation found that after that guidance was published, companies including Tyson Foods, Pilgrim's Pride, Purdue Farms, George's, and Coke Foods were using antibiotics more extensively than regulators realized. Pilgrim's Pride's own feed mill records showed antibiotics being added to every ration fed to entire flocks. So when you stand in the chicken aisle at Walmart, which received a grade of 38% in an NRDC antibiotic stewardship report, or at Kroger, which scored even lower at 33%, the label in front of you is navigating a regulatory environment so porous that the industry's own largest players cannot consistently honor their own public commitments. The NRDC graded the 5 largest U.S. grocery chains on their antibiotic policies. Costco, Albertsons, and Safeway, Publix, Walmart, and Kroger all received D grades, not failing technically, but far from passing. Whole Foods was the one exception. They have a store-wide policy requiring all meat to be raised without antibiotics, the only major national retailer with a genuine blanket standard. Now let's get specific. Based on salmonella contamination data from USDA's own testing, antibiotic stewardship grades from the NRDC, the sourcing practices of private label brands, and the documented history of their suppliers, here are the 9 U.S. supermarkets where the gap between what's on the label and what's in your cart is widest. Starting at number 9, Publix. Publix is beloved across the Southeast. It has a reputation for cleanliness, good service, and quality. But on antibiotic stewardship, its own private label chicken brands are largely sourced without strong antibiotic-free commitments. The NRDC gave Publix a D, rating it at 38%, tied with Walmart. Their store brand chicken doesn't carry a meaningful antibiotic commitment, and their signage directing customers to better options is minimal. Number 8, Albertsons and Safeway. With hundreds of stores operating under multiple banners, Safeway, Vons, Jewel Osco, Shaw's, Albertsons has massive reach. It scored 39% from the NRDC. Like most chains in this tier, its private label brands lack strong sourcing commitments, and consumers navigating its stores have very little guidance on which products come from cleaner supply chains. Number 7, H-E-B. H-E-B is an institution in Texas, a fiercely loyal customer base. But the Consumer Reports analysis of USDA contamination data identified H-E-B's own meat plant in San Antonio as one of the worst performing facilities in the country for salmonella, processing chicken under the H-E-B brand from a Category 3 rated facility. That's the chain's own plant, their own label. Number 6, Costco. Costco sells enormous volumes of chicken. Its rotisserie chicken has become almost a cultural phenomenon. But Costco's poultry supplier, Lincoln Premium Poultry, a company Costco itself helped create to secure its chicken supply, has received the USDA's Category 3 rating for excessive salmonella contamination. The NRDC gave Costco a D on antibiotic stewardship. And the sheer volume of chicken moving through Costco's supply chain means that contamination at any point in that system reaches an enormous number of households. Number 5, Kroger. Kroger is the largest supermarket chain in the United States by revenue. It operates under dozens of banners: Fred Meyer, King Soopers, Fry's, Ralph's, and it sells private label chicken under the Simple Truth brand, which carries antibiotic-free claims. But Kroger scored the lowest of any of the 5 chains evaluated by the NRDC, 33%, reflecting that despite the Simple Truth marketing, the broader chain's sourcing practices and supplier commitments fall significantly short. A USDA investigation also found that some Simple Truth products tested positive for antibiotics. Number 4, Walmart. Walmart sells more food than any retailer in America. Its great value private label chicken is consumed by tens of millions of households. Walmart received a D from the NRDC, 38%, and its supply chain is vast and complex enough that traceability is genuinely difficult for the average consumer. Walmart sources from multiple major processors, many of the same processors whose plants have repeatedly earned Category 3 salmonella ratings. The scale of Walmart's chicken operation means that any systemic weakness in its supplier network is a systemic weakness for American food safety. Number 3, Purdue at major retail chains. Purdue doesn't operate its own supermarkets, but its chicken is sold in virtually every major chain in the country, and Purdue's contamination record warrants its own entry on this list. 4 Purdue plants earned Category 3 salmonella ratings in the first half of 2025. A ProPublica investigation linked Purdue chicken specifically to a multi-state salmonella outbreak. Public health officials found the outbreak strain in Purdue products at multiple retail locations. Purdue markets itself as a responsible producer. No antibiotics ever appears on many of its labels. But that label, as we've established, exists in a verification environment so weak that even Tyson had to walk back similar claims. Number 2. Tyson at major retail chains. Tyson Foods processes more chicken than any company in the United States. Its products reach virtually every supermarket in the country. A Tyson facility in Springdale, Arkansas, appeared in Consumer Reports' worst offenders list for salmonella contamination. Tyson abandoned its raised without antibiotics labels on several product lines in 2024 after USDA scrutiny. And Tyson's scale, it processes roughly 20% of all chicken sold in the United States, means that its contamination issues are not isolated events. They are structural realities that move through the supply chains of every retailer that carries its products. And number 1, any supermarket with no antibiotic disclosure policy and no supplier accountability program. The number 1 entry on this list isn't a single chain, it's a category. And most American supermarkets fall into it. A store that carries no signage directing consumers to antibiotic-free options, whose private label brands have no verified sourcing commitment, whose buyers have not publicly held their suppliers to any meaningful contamination or antibiotic standard. That store is operating exactly the way the US regulatory framework allows, and that framework allows a lot. So what does cleaner chicken actually look like? Where do you go from here? And this isn't meant to make you afraid of cooking dinner. It's meant to make you a more informed shopper in a system that, structurally, is not designed to inform you. Whole Foods remains the only major national retailer with a store-wide ban on antibiotics across all meat. Their sourcing standards are stricter than any other mass market chain. Look for the USDA Organic Seal. Organic certification prohibits the use of antibiotics at any point in the animal's life and also prohibits chlorine washing in the final processing stage. It is the most reliable regulatory floor available to US consumers. Look for animal welfare approved or certified humane labels. Both certifications include restrictions on antibiotic use and require higher welfare standards, which, as European regulators have argued for decades, are directly connected to contamination risk. Animals under less stress, in less crowded conditions, with better hygiene throughout, produce cleaner meat. Check the USDA plant number on your package. It's printed on the label. A number beginning with P, followed by digits. You can cross-reference that plant number against USDA's monthly salmonella testing postings at the FSIS website to see whether the facility that processed your chicken has a contamination record. It takes about 2 minutes. Almost no one does it. You can. And buy from smaller regional producers with transparent sourcing. Chains like Sprouts, local co-ops, and farmers markets often carry chicken from processors whose plant numbers don't appear on any worst offenders list. The United States has some of the most sophisticated food technology in the world. It also has a regulatory framework that, by design, prioritizes industry throughput over consumer transparency. And that has been the settled reality for decades. Europe didn't ban American chicken because Europeans are paranoid or protectionist. They banned it because they made a different choice, that the precautionary principle matters, that you don't wait for proof of harm before acting, that a chemical bath at the end of a dirty line is not a substitute for a clean line. Salmonella causes more than 1 million illnesses in this country every year. The USDA knows which plants are producing the most contaminated chicken. It publishes the data, and then it watches the chicken ship. You can be angry about that, or you can use the tools you have. Read the label, check the plant number, know which chains have made real commitments and which ones are selling you a D-grade supply chain in a premium-looking package. The chicken aisle isn't going to change because a federal agency decided to care more. It's going to change because you do.